and they said to me, "Oh, hey, you have PCOS." And I said, "What?" I'm instantly getting on Google. Like, I've never heard of PCOS. What is that? So, for those of you who might not know, PCOS is very common in women in their 20s. And I don't know how long I had it, but I know I had it probably before marriage, because I did some of the symptoms that I read on Google, like facial hair or, excessive hair or acne. It had been happening to me before marriage. So if I had to assume, I would say I probably had PCOS at the age of 23. But from my research, it happens quite often, and it happens a lot to African American women as well in their early 20s. So they told me over the phone that I had PCOS. They told me like it was nothing to worry about. They broke it to me like, "Oh, piece of cake. It's just PCOS." I was like, "Oh, okay." And they were like, "We can always give you medicine to get pregnant. It's no big deal." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I kind of just, left it there. Again, I knew that I didn't want to get pregnant immediately. My husband and I always talked about kids. We always knew we wanted them in the future, but it was not anything that had to happen right at that moment, right? So I wasn't worried about it. I went on, time went on, and fast forward until about 2017, I started saying, "Okay, well, I'm ready. I think I'm ready." And I started getting on prenatal vitamins, trying to get prepared to conceive. And we started trying to conceive naturally. Months went on, the year went on. It didn't happen. So about 2019, I went back to the doctor that summer. And I said, "Hey, I'm still trying to get pregnant. It's not happening." "Okay, well, we're going to give you another medicine that's going to help you ovulate. Go buy an ovulation kit from Walgreens, track it at home, do this, do that." I followed all the rules. I did everything. I ovulated on time. I ovulated actually at the highest peak. So we were ecstatic. We're like, "Oh my gosh, we're ovulating. That's not an issue." One issue with PCOS is that you do not ovulate regularly. So ovulation was not an issue at all. The ovulation was on point every single time. So we were like, "Okay, we're about to get pregnant any day now. Like, it's gonna happen." So it still didn't happen. I ended up going back to the doctor months later, and I'm like, "Okay, still not pregnant. The pills you gave me are not working. Like, what's next?" Like, I'm getting nervous at this point, like, because the doctors are just telling me, "Oh, it's gonna happen. Don't worry about it. It's coming." They're kind of just treating me like a number at this point and brushing it off. So I'm like, "Okay." Then she tells me, "We actually need to do a procedure on you to see if your tubes are blocked. We need to do that. So you need to come back in a couple of weeks. Go ahead and schedule that, and we'll do that procedure." I'm like, "Okay." I'm a little nervous, but I'm like, "Whatever. I got to do what I got to do because I want to get pregnant." So I go in and I get this procedure done, and it turns out the procedure did not work. I was awake for this procedure. It did not work. They told me to my face instantly, "Hey, it's not working. We can't see if your tubes are blocked or not. We're gonna have to do another procedure to see if your tubes are blocked or not, and move on from there." And I'm just kind of like, "Another one?" And she's like, "Yeah, and just to let you know, this one you have to be put to sleep for." So now I'm really nervous. I've never been put to sleep in my life. I'm just scared. I'm like, "Lord, what is going on?" So I go get another procedure, actually in 2021. Time passed on because, as we all know, end of 2019, early 2020, COVID hit. So we were sitting down. We were still. We kind of put a pause on, the infertility and going back and forth to the doctor. When COVID settled a little bit, we were able to go back outside. I found an IVF doctor. I knew, I said, well, maybe I should, I had another friend who was going through IVF at the time, and she put the bug in my ear on that. She was like, "Maybe you need to get an IVF doctor and go ask more questions," because what I was being told was it's only so much an OBGYN can do. So I was like, "Okay, well, let me do that." So I did my research. I went and found an IVF doctor. I had a consultation. Time went on again. This was January 2020. So I went back in April of 2020, 1 week before my 7-year wedding anniversary. So I said, "Okay, it was time for the procedure." I got the procedure done. I was terrified. I got put to sleep. But it was, glory to God, it was all good. Nothing went wrong. I woke up from the procedure, and I remember there was a nurse who woke me up. And she said, Mrs. Cooper, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. I was very groggy. And she said to me, I'm glad you're okay. I really hope that everything's successful and hope you get pregnant. I said, thank you. I said, do you have children? And she said, I do. I have one daughter. And she said to me, it took me 7 years to conceive. 7 years. And I said, wow. I said, my 7-year wedding anniversary is next week. So I'm just like, wow, I'm a big numbers person, kind of like Portia. So I kept hanging on to that number 7. I was like, wow. So yeah, my 7-year anniversary is coming up. I was like, that's funny. She's like, yeah. She was like, so good luck. I've been through this before. I'm like, thank you. So turns out my tubes were not blocked. The doctor came in, gave us the report. My tubes were not blocked. Everything was fine. She said, hey, you're a great candidate for IUI, which is insemination process. I said, no, I don't want to do IUI. I've done my research. It's not very successful. I want to go straight to IVF. She said, okay. So time went on again. I had some health issues, like my vitamin D levels were really low. I wasn't getting enough sun. So we couldn't get started immediately. I had to get on vitamin D supplements. I had to get my vitamin D right, because what they were telling me was low vitamin D can cause miscarriage. So I was doing that. I'm like, oh, I was getting so annoyed because I was beginning to get impatient. And what I want to let people know today is, when you're going through your journey with infertility, if you're experiencing infertility, or if you're waiting on any other blessing in your life to prevail, you have to remember to have patience. It's so important, because I ran out of patience. I've always been patient. I've always trusted in God. But at this particular time, I ran out of patience. And the bad part about it was I ran out of patience because of other people. And when I say that, I say because people started pressuring me to have a baby. I mean, there were people who would DM me on Facebook and say, hey, I see you and your husband, I see y'all take trips and y'all do these photo shoots and Christmas cards, but where's the baby? Oh, I see you have 2 dogs that you post on Facebook, but where are the kids? And I had coworkers and people would just pressure me like so much. I had flesh and blood. I had family who would tell me, oh, you're never going to have children. I had an auntie, I'll never forget. She told me, oh, you have 2 dogs. Those dogs are going to be your children. You'll never have children. And it started to break me. I felt like I was being attacked. I felt like the enemy was playing around my family and around my friends and my Facebook friends, and allowing people to attack me with their words. And it was getting to me heavily. So I'm like, and instead of me being patient in the process and saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to be patient because one thing keeps happening after another. Low vitamin D, you got to wait. COVID hit, you had to push it back because of that. One thing kept happening after another, and it was causing me to be impatient. But the main thing was the pressure. I mean, pressure from my mother, pressure. And mind you, as I said earlier, I've never shared my story. So none of these people pressuring me knew about it. It was a huge secret. Nobody knew that my husband and I were dealing with infertility. Nobody knew. We would brush it off. I would make up things to say, like people would say, where's the baby? I would say, oh, I'm trying to finish my master's degree. I went back to school after marriage when we first got married. So I was like, I want to get my master's degree. Wait a minute. Let me focus on school. That wasn't the truth. I did want to finish school, but it was a cop out, to be honest. If I would have got pregnant while I was doing my master's degree, I would have been totally fine with it. But they didn't know that. Or I would say, I want to travel some more. We had just took a trip to Paris. So I was really putting that on heavy because I wanted people to think, oh, well, they're trying to travel. They want to go out the country. Okay, makes sense. No kids right now. So I was using that as a scapegoat because I didn't want people to know the truth. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. And I always said, I'll never share this. I stood firm on it. I kept saying to myself, I will never tell my own mother. I will never tell my family. I will never tell anybody that I'm struggling to have a child because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I felt like I have it all. I got the man, I got the degrees, the job, I'm an entrepreneur. I got my business. I was like, everything's going well. But my fertility has been attacked. I was like, oh my God, like this is terrible. I'm so ashamed because as a woman, right, we believe and we think in our brain, okay, this is what I was put on this earth to do. I was put on this earth to bear children. Why is it not happening for me? Why is it happening so naturally for other people? I see people announcing almost every day on social media, people I graduated high school with, people who aren't even married, no judgment. but it was just like randomly happening for people who it seemed like they weren't even trying to have a kid. And every time I looked up, somebody was pregnant. So it was eating me away. And I just couldn't take it. I was hurting very, very bad. So what ended up happening was I went into a very deep depression about this past year, 2020, 2022. I went into a depression. I'm sorry, no, 2021. I went into a depression and I would cry. I would cry so hard. I cried till it hurt. I've never cried that hard in my life. And I would tell my husband, I said, I just don't understand. I don't understand why this is happening to me. I don't understand why we keep getting pushed back. I just couldn't understand, right? But what I couldn't understand was I never lost my faith in God. My faith in God was always there. I always learned in the church, all you had to have was the faith the size of a mustard seed. And if you've seen a mustard seed, it's very tiny. So I had that. I had all the faith in the world. I had the dreams. I started having dreams. God started sending me dreams that I would have a son. And I was like, oh, I would wake up and I would be excited and I would be happy. And I would tell my husband, babe, I had another dream last night that we're pregnant. I had a dream that we're having a son. I had a dream at least 6 or 7 times that I was going to birth a son. And it was blowing my mind. I was excited. I was happy. And I was like, okay, I know it's going to happen. I'm good. I got the faith. But when the people would come back in my DM or my family would tell me, hey, you're never going to have children. When naysayers would say those kind of things, I would just always let it get to me. And I had to understand that the enemy was playing with my mind. The enemy was getting to me through them. And it's unfortunate. You know, I was like, how's the enemy using these people? I even got a text message one day from a cousin. And he said to me, it was Mother's Day about 2 years ago. And he texted me and he said, happy Mother's Day. Oh, psych, I'm just playing because we know you don't have kids. And I cried again. I just cried. I'm like, oh, this is breaking my heart. People are now making fun of me. People are poking fun at my situation, you know, but again, they didn't know. But I would tell my husband, you know, it feels like to me with infertility, whenever someone asked me when I was having a baby or whenever they made fun of me, I always felt like I had a battle wound on my body. And I felt like they would rip that Band-Aid off of a wound that was not healed yet. And I felt like they would poke at it. They would poke with the questions and with the jokes. And you don't have kids. And what's wrong with you? And, you know, all these things people would say. And yes, even family, even, you know, associates, you know, co-workers, you know, people would say these things. And I just felt horrible and I felt low. And what started to happen in this journey was I started to let the enemy use my mind as a playground. And it's amazing that he could do that and manipulate me because I started saying, you know what? I think my husband's going to divorce me. And I don't know where that came from. Me and that man been together 13 years. I never thought that. So I was like, wow, I think he's going to leave me because why would he want a woman who can't bear children? Why, out of all the women in the world that he could have, why me? That was the new seed that the enemy was trying to come at me with. He was trying to figure out ways to get me down and keep me down and plant those things in my head that started to trickle into my marriage. And I started to question my marriage, something that I had never questioned. I mean, my husband is my best friend and he was truly the only person who knew what I was going through because he was going through it right with me. And the enemy didn't like that. We started to pray together. You know, I started to fast and really started to do other things to strengthen my spirit. And what I want to tell you guys is when you're going through the storm, you can't see clearly because you're still in the storm. So you can't see what lies ahead after the rain is gone. You can't see your rainbow until the rain is gone. So your mind is still foggy. Your mind is not clear. But in order to keep your mind from being foggy, in order to keep your mind clear, you have to feed your spirit. So I started feeding my spirit. I started getting in my word. I started reading my word on my lunch break at my job. I started fasting. I started praying. And little by little, I started telling people. I started telling some of my close friends who I knew wouldn't judge me, who I knew would pray for me, who I knew were prayer warriors. I said, you know what? I'm going through something heavy. I'm trying to have a baby. I've been diagnosed with PCOS. Let me tell you what that is. I need you to pray for me. I went to the pastor who married my husband and I called him and I broke down crying. I said, I need you to pray for me because I'm weak. My spirit is feeling weak. And I know the enemy is trying to get at me because this is damaging me. This is hurting me. It's breaking me like nothing had ever broken me before. I had been through tests. I had been through trials a lot in my life. when I turned to the church at a very young age, my mom was on drugs. A lot of people didn't know that. And I kept saying to my husband, you know, I haven't experienced anything this heavy until, I hadn't experienced any trial this heavy. That's what I'll say. I haven't experienced a trial this heavy since I was 5 years old, when my mom was on drugs. My grandmother helped raise me because my mom was on drugs and she was in the streets and she wasn't there like all the time. She was in and out of my life. So I would always compare my story of infertility to that pain. I kept going back to that pain. I was like, okay, I went through this spiritual warfare starting at the age of 5 years old until I was 13. I kept going through that with my mom. And I was like, man, I went through spiritual warfare really bad, but this is something different. I was like, this is different. This is a different pain. Not being able to bear children. I was like, this is something it's on another scale. I thought that my mom being on drugs was the worst thing that could have possibly ever happened to me. I thought that once I got through that, once my mom and I patched things up and she got clean and turned her life around, I thought, foolishly of me, I thought it was over. I was like, oh, okay, I went through a big thing in life. That's over with. Now I'm gonna live happily ever after. But what I didn't realize is that that's not how it operates. When you give your life to Christ, Christ is going to continue to test you and bring you new tests and new battles to fight. But what I was also doing wrong was I was trying to fight the battle of infertility myself. I was trying to figure it out on my own. I was trying to Google. I was trying to go to the doctor. I was doing all of these things and asking the doctors all of these questions, and I was doing everything wrong. What I was supposed to be doing was sitting back and letting God take the wheel. I was supposed to be sitting back and fasting and praying the whole time, and I wasn't in the beginning of that journey. I was still ashamed. I was still hiding it. God made me need him. That's what I want. If you get anything out of my testimony today, I want you to take away that God will sit you down and he will pause your life and he will make you need him. And that's exactly what he did to me. He made me need him. He made me fall on my face. He made me fall on my face and go into prayer like I had never prayed before. The way I prayed changed. I used to tell my husband, I'm praying for my son who I can't even see. I'm praying for his school teachers already. I'm praying for his principal. I'm praying for his future wife. I'm praying for his future children, my future grandchildren. The way I was praying was changing. And I was like, is this what God was trying to unlock the whole time? God had me praying a prayer that I had never prayed before. I was praying for stuff I couldn't even see. I ended up running across Portia's live one day, which is how I found Portia on Facebook. And she was talking about her journey with pregnancy and infertility. And I remember she kept saying, activate your faith. You have to activate your faith. And I was like, what does that mean? What does activate your faith mean? I didn't understand it until I reached out to her on Instagram. Like she told you guys, I reached out to her after I saw her go live, and we talked, and she didn't know me from Adam, but she embraced me, and she gave me words of encouragement, and she was like, yeah, activate your faith and start buying stuff and start doing stuff. And Apostle Andrea is another friend of mine who Portia mentioned earlier. She would tell me as well, hey, start buying stuff. Start getting that baby nursery together. Start planning your baby shower. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking in my mind, that's crazy. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? I don't want to start buying stuff. I don't want to start decorating. I didn't want to do it because I couldn't see it. I could not see it physically here. And I didn't want to start planning, and I didn't have a baby yet, but I did just that. I took a leap on faith, and I bought this onesie. Was the first thing that I bought for my son. It says dream on it, if you can see here closely. This pack of onesies, I bought these onesies for my son 2 years ago, and I started praying over these onesies. I would go into my closet and I would lay this onesie on the floor, and I would get on my knees and I would pray over this onesie. And I would cry. This onesie has my tear stains on it. I've never washed it. He hasn't even worn it yet. But I would pray over it. I would cry on it. And I would say, Lord, please bless me. Bless my womb. Take it away. Whatever it is blocking this blessing. Bring my son. I'm ready for my son. I had so many dreams that I was having a son. I just knew I wasn't going to have a girl at this point. So I would start saying son. Just how Portia was saying she would start calling Aiden's name. I would start saying my son and speaking that into existence because I believed in the dreams that God had sent me. I believed, okay, God said in my dreams that I'm going to have a son. So I'm going to claim it and I'm going to start saying my son. So when I was going to the doctor, I started saying, I'm ready for my son, doctor. So what do I need to do to get my son? I just kept saying my son because I had so many dreams. And the last dream that I ended up having before we conceived, I had a dream that I was 3 months pregnant. And in that dream, I was laying on a table at the doctor. And I said to the doctor, okay, doctor, what's going on? And the doctor looked at me and my husband put his hand on my stomach in the dream. And the doctor said, you guys are 3 months pregnant. And I said, what? And we looked at each other and she said, you didn't know? I said, no, we didn't know. She said, oh, you're 3 months pregnant. I woke up from that dream and I was not pregnant. I was mad that day. I was mad at God. And I told God, I said, God, if you're going to send me dreams that are that real, I don't want these dreams anymore because these dreams make me feel like I'm being teased at this point. The dream felt so real. I woke up in tears, So I was just like, I don't want these dreams because these dreams are like teasing me at this point. And here I go again, doubting. Here I go again. My faith is getting away from me, right? And I kept saying with my mouth, no, I got faith. I do have faith. But then I would say one other thing and I would say, oh no, these dreams are making me mad. No, these dreams are teasing me. So I was battling. My flesh and my spirit were battling. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm just going to keep on trying for IVF. I'm going to get back on the journey with IVF and I'm going to see what happens. So this time last year, I started IVF. I started IVF to be exact on December the 7th. I started doing my IVF shots. If any of you are not familiar with how IVF works, you do have to take injections for 1 to 2 weeks to go ahead and get your eggs mature. And that's what I started doing. I started getting on the shots and I started injecting myself. Well, my husband started injecting me in our living room. And I said, I really, I hope this works. We prayed over our medicine. We got ready and we were like, we're going to just do IVF because we're going to get our son here. So after 2 weeks of doing IVF, my eggs were mature enough and it was time to go have my eggs retrieved and follow up with the procedure. And I went on December 18th last year. I went to the doctor at 5 a.m. I got my eggs retrieved. I had to get put to sleep yet again. And I had to get the eggs retrieved. And I was so excited. I was so scared, but I was excited. I woke up and my husband told me we got 14 eggs retrieved today. I was like, oh, wow, I'm so happy. We got 14 eggs. This is great. So what a lot of people don't know is when you do get those eggs retrieved and they do put the eggs with the sperm to turn them into embryos, they're not guaranteed to make it. Sometimes your eggs will die off. And that's exactly what happened over the course of time. We found out that our eggs went from 14 to 10. And I was like, oh my God, my eggs are disappearing. And here I am getting scared again, I'm like, okay, just keep the faith. It's okay. Because really, logically, you only need one. You only need one embryo. That's it. You would like to have more in the freezer, but you only need one to try to make it happen and get it implanted. So it dropped to 10 and I called my husband and we were sad. And he was like, okay, keep me posted. They told us that Christmas Day last year that we would get our final number. And we got our final number at 6 a.m. on Christmas Day. We ended up having 7 embryos. So we got 7 embryos and I was like, wow, 7. I was like, we've been married for 7 years. Here's that number thing again. I'm like, we've been married for 7 years. And we, that nurse had told me it took her 7 years to conceive. And here I am with 7 embryos. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, that's a great number. So then we went to the doctor and we talked to my IVF doctor and she was excited. They tested the embryos. They were great embryos, great quality. Everything was on the up and up. She was like, okay, we're going to get ready to transfer day and put an embryo inside of you. And we're going to aim for February. I was like, okay, sounds good. So what they don't tell you about IVF is that everything in IVF surrounds your cycle. Everything. You can't move without that cycle. So here I am in January, late January, getting my body prepared to have surgery and get an embryo put in so that I can get pregnant. And I get a call from my nurse at the doctor's office. And she said, did you have your period yet? We need to get this thing on the roll and we need to know when the period is coming so we can track everything. I said, I still haven't gotten my period. I'm late. She said, how late are you? I said, I'm about 2 weeks late. She said, oh, Kelly, you got to go buy a pregnancy test. One thing you gotta know is when you're dealing with infertility, and I know some of you guys who might be dealing with it, we hate to take pregnancy tests. I know Portia said this earlier. I was like, I can't agree more. You hate to take a pregnancy test because it was so depressing. It was just like every time I would get a pregnancy test, I would cry. I would get sad because I knew it was going to be negative. I was like, why do y'all make me take these pregnancy tests? Why would y'all torture me? You know, I'm dealing with infertility. You know, I'm not pregnant. Like, I was going off. I had an attitude. I was like, I don't want to take no more pregnancy tests. Like, I'm tired of this. She was like, I know, but I'm so sorry. You have to do it. Like, I was like, okay, fine. I went to Walgreens. I got 2 pregnancy tests. And I was like, I'm going to go ahead and get 2 just so I can let them know for sure. I'm going to take both of these. I'm not pregnant. So this was January 31st of 2022. And I took the pregnancy test. And I was about to throw the test in the trash because I was like, yeah, I already know the outcome because this is what it always is. And lo and behold, I got toilet paper to wrap the test up and throw it away. And I looked at the test and it was 2 lines. And I said, oh my God. I was like calling my husband and I was screaming. I was like, it's 2 lines on this test. It's 2 lines. He was like, no, stop playing like that. Why would you joke that way? And I'm like, would I joke about something like this? I'm like, we've been through infertility now for 7 years. I'm not going to joke, you know? So we were both in shock. We couldn't believe it. We didn't want to believe it because we didn't want to get our hopes up and be let down again. So I took another test. I started drinking all this water and I was like, I'm going to take another test in like 30 minutes. So I took another test, same outcome, 2 lines again. I was like, man, this is crazy. So at this time, I got both tests and I started taking pictures of them and I'm ready to celebrate because I'm like, I have to be pregnant. Like, I just have to be. Like, there's no way 2 tests are going to, you know, tell me I'm pregnant and I'm not. So we got up and I had already bought other onesies for our parents to surprise them whenever the day came. So we got up and I got the onesies and I packaged them up. They said, you're going to be grandparents. And it was about 10 o'clock at night and we drove to our parents' house and we surprised them with the onesies and we told them we were pregnant. And it was amazing. Everybody was happy and we were rejoicing. Mind you, my family still doesn't know that we went through infertility. It's still a big secret. So at the time when we were rejoicing, nobody knew. You know, they're just thinking, oh, they waited 7 years and now they're finally pregnant. So the next day we did go to the doctor. I called my doctor. She said, come in and do blood work. It was February 1st. She said, come in and do blood work because we want to make sure. We see what the test say, but we're going to check your blood because that's not going to lie at all. I said, okay. We went in, we got blood work done. And later that day, she called me and she said, Kelly, you're super pregnant. I said, I am? She said, you are 6 weeks pregnant. I said, wow. She said, you didn't know? I said, I had no idea. Now, mind you, I told you I had just had a dream. The last dream I had before this happened was the dream of me and my husband at the doctor telling me that we were 3 months pregnant and saying in the dream, you didn't know? You know, it was like it was playing out just the same way the dream did. It was very similar. And I said, no, I didn't know I was pregnant. She said, congratulations. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even make it to IVF. I didn't even get to that point to use my embryos that are in the freezer. So fast forward to today, my son, 7, Prince Cooper, he was born on September 14th. 2 days after my birthday. I thought he was going to come on my birthday, but he didn't. He came 2 days after, but I turned 33. And I keep saying this number 33. I like Portia keeps saying 33 is her number. And I'm like, wait, I had my son at the age 33. So yeah, I was 33, not in my plan. Because remember, y'all, I said I want to be before 30 or by 30. So that didn't happen. But it happened. Glory to God. My son is here. He's in the living room right now with my mom and he's asleep while mommy is in here sharing how he got in this world. And after we tracked everything with the doctors, after we tracked what happened and everything, we actually conceived last year on December 27th. So there is another 7. We conceived on December 27th. We were married 7 years. When we conceived, we have 7 embryos to this day in the freezer that we don't know if we're going to use or not because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if God's going to give us our next baby because I really want a girl. Next, we don't know if it's going to happen again like it did last time, but we're leaving those embryos there just because. And one day we'll get to tell our son this beautiful journey